There are plenty of young teenagers and kids who have all of a sudden been given lifelong prison sentences. Yes, these young individuals have traded playtime, arcades, video games, and having fun with friends for the cruel world of jail and discussing prison food. Why did this happen, and what led them down that horrifying path? Here are 10 young kids who are decaying in jail. Number 1. Antonio Barbo. In 2012, Antonio had committed a horrific crime, ending the life of his 78-year-old grandmother, Barbara Olson. But these next facts will just bring chills down your spine. Antonio had visited her home in Sheboygan and all of a sudden beaten her to death with a hammer and hatchet. When more and more evidence was slowly being revealed to the courts, Antonio had his back against the wall with no options left. Out of the blue, he pleaded no contest to the deliberate homicide, interpreting to him accepting the court's conviction but not admitting that he at the same time is guilty. His lawyer tried to convince the judge and jury that his defendant is mentally ill. When Antonio was making a speech to the court, he didn't show much regret, but rather a cold and still face. He stated that I am not very good at expressing my feelings. I know I took someone's mother, grandmother, sister, and even friend, and I have messed up the lives of many because of my actions. After the court's trial, he was sent to a professional psychologist. He stated that 10-year-old Antonio had gone through a lot of trauma in his past, all stemming from a car accident in his youth, causing an impairment on his brain's ability to make crucial decisions. Still, the judge had zero remorse, sentencing him to life behind bars, with the possibility of parole after 35 or more years. Number 2. Roxanna Sikorski. No one in the court could believe the crimes of Roxanna. It was a day we will never forget, as she had masterminded a grand plan to take the life of her little brother. She explained in court she had woken up randomly in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden she had an idea that if I kill my younger brother, it will bring chaos upon my parents. Something she would get joy out of, even though her actions were pure evil when they brought her mother to court. Her mother, Lorraine Sikorski, stated to the judge, if she is sentenced as an adult, the harsh conditions of prison would only crush her fragile life. The psychologist then stated that she is diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, an attachment disorder that stops her heart from giving emotional love or care to another human being. Roxanna cried in court and even apologized to everyone for her evil plot. But the judge knew that mentally she was not stable, giving her 10 to 20 years behind bars. The court decided that it was in society's best interest to have her locked up, because anyone could be her next victim. Wanting to make Roxanna an example to all young individuals in the United States who might ever think about hurting others. Number 3. Jessica Caroline. When she was just 17 years of age, she had crashed her car into a hospital and killed 2 civilians. If you look at the following images, you can tell the scenes were purely horrifying. When it was time for her trial, she immediately accepted the plea bargain, and with her facial expressions, everyone could tell she was remorseful for her irresponsible actions. As the spectators in the court were upheld by what happened, evidence came out that Jessica was driving close to the Wyoming hospital when an unforeseen disaster saw her crash her into a vehicle into the hospital sign and then straight into the building. And the consequences were shocking. On impact, she took the lives of 2 27-year-olds. What investigators found next is just going to shock you. In her car, they found an air duster can, suspecting that she had inhaled the so-called chemical. During the trial, she admitted that she did in fact inhale the substance for a desire to get that drunk, intoxicated feeling. The findings of this fact did not aid in the judge finding remorse for Jessica, as it portrayed to the courts her physical state was no different to that of a person drunk on alcohol. It was also evident from testing the speedometer history that Jessica was traveling almost 75 plus miles on a regular street. Sadly, no one even had a seatbelt. Showing irresponsibility after irresponsibility, the judge sentenced her to 12 plus years in prison. Jessica cried and cried, showing regret for the one decision that ruined the lives of so many people. Number 4. The Beaver Brothers. These brothers took the spotlight when they committed a heinous crime, taking the lives of 5 of their own family members. Robert, 18 years of age, and Michael, 16 years of age when the crime happened. Their whole town was frozen in shock as to how such innocent-looking teenagers could commit such evil. In court, Robert, the older brother, admitted to the judge that it was always his desire to become a serial murderer, and he smiled with an evil grin similar to that of a devil, leaving the jury to come to the conclusion that they are dealing with a mentally insane individual. And with no regret or conscience for his actions, Robert immediately pleaded guilty. It was something that left chills in the community, as he didn't even try to fight for his freedom. It was obvious to the judge that Robert was a man of insidious behavior. With no compassion, he sentenced him to life behind bars, and his younger brother 5 life sentences. Many members in the courtroom that day stated that they felt sorry for whoever was going to share a prison cell with Robert, as their lives could be in danger. Unfortunately, no one could understand the motivations of the brothers. It just shows us how evil human beings can be. Number 5. Sierra Helseth. Sierra, 16 years of age, with her 18-year-old boyfriend, was standing very rigid in the court. During trial, it became clear that she took the life of her father, Daniel Helseth, an innocent and loving father. The actions of Sierra were wicked, as both her and her boyfriend stabbed him repeatedly with a knife. Then, in a mastermind plan, they wrapped him in a blanket and placed him in the trunk of his car. They had intentions to cover their tracks, that way they could never be convicted of murder. Could you imagine a daughter killing her own dad, someone who raised her from childhood? As the evidence was set forth by the district attorneys, the courtroom mood just went bitter. The judge then sentenced the couple to life behind bars, with a slight possibility of parole after 23 years. The sinister nature of their actions and the strategic disgust of their crimes, shattering love of all those important around them, made the life sentence given to them seem nothing more than fair. After almost an hour of sentencing, Sierra just stood cold-faced, as if not a single drop of regret had touched her heart, while her boyfriend had a completely different emotion. Slowly, the magnitude of his crimes really started to click, taking over his mental psyche, as he realized that he would never see the light of normal civilization again. With all that being said, the real question arises as to what had led to the murder of such a beloved father. And how could someone end the life of their own blood, especially a father? A story of great sorrow. Number 6. James Fairweather. James was given a 27-year jail sentence for his random serial murders, and something in his smile is just straight sinister. He randomly killed 2 innocent civilians and watched them slowly die while he was holding them. An act that can only be defined as psychotic. The first life that was taken was that of James Atfield. In March of 2014, he was hit by Mr. Fairweather and suffered immense damage to his brain. Then again, a couple months later, Nahid Almania, a highly intelligent student from Saudi Arabia, attending one of the world's most prestigious schools, the University of Essex in England. Both victims unfortunately died in his arms as he just watched with zero conscience. Now, what is really disturbing is that when he was finally caught by the police, he immediately admitted to his wrongdoings as if he did not fear prison, explaining to the courts step by step his tactics of how he killed the 2 civilians. More horrendous than anything else, James was just 15 years old at the time, a student at Colchester Academy in the United Kingdom. When he explained the reasons for his crimes to the judge, he tried to blame everything on the fact that he was often bullied at school because of his facial features, dyslexia, and the autism disorder that he attained, stating that these all caused him to eventually explode with anger and commit those murders. With the following excuses and using his young age as another factor, he tried to appeal the 27-year sentence, but the judge just wouldn't budge, responding that your evil nature requires you to be far, far away from the innocent civilians of society. Number 7. Petrie Curti. At 13 years old, this England resident was sentenced to 12 years behind bars for a horrific killing Glynis Bensley. Due to the advancements of technology, a camera system on the streets of England showed that Petrie attacked a woman, threw her on the ground, and repeatedly stamped his foot on her face. Petrie then runs to a park in the West Midlands and brags about his murder to his friends, portraying the incident as if it was an accomplishment. The sinister act of the murders just brought agony to the people of the town, and especially Glynis's family and friends. When Petrie's lawyers were pleading his case, they tried to convince the courts that Curti was a victim of severe childhood trauma and troubles. They stated that in his past there was a lack of parental figures and authority. No one really ever guided him on the appropriate actions to take, and when Curti would get into trouble, instead of punishment, his parents would just blame others. His defense attorney stated that this caused Curti to avoid any responsibility for any of his actions and never became a responsible person in life. Curti Evans stated that he did not purposely murder Glynis, but rather he misidentified her as another male. But his explanation did not help, as his past convictions showed multiple theft violations and battery charges in the past, all subsequently decreasing his chances of innocence. These incidents show us that when a juvenile delinquent is not properly helped, the consequences can not only devastate his life, but the lives of others in his path, leading to a vicious cycle of harm. In the end, the judge saw Curti as a threat to society, sentencing him to 12 years behind bars. And although Curti was stunned as to why he would be spending more than a decade behind bars, it is plenty of time to think about his actions. Number 8. T.J. Lane. 17-year-old TJ was the antagonist of this story, as he killed 3 Chardon High School students and brutally injuring 3 others. A story that broke the news headlines all over the country. Allegedly, his anger stemmed from a fight that all started between him and another student on the bus. For some reason, the conflict really impacted his mental state, and after a couple of months, TJ takes a pistol to school and begins shooting the innocent students. Not only did 3 students die, 2 other students were severely hurt, and the last student permanently paralyzed from neck to toe. When police received news of the incident, dozens of police cars and even a SWAT team arrived to the scene, leaving the people of the community in shock. When the trial started, the biggest debate by the courts was should he be charged as an adult or a child. Worse than anything else, all throughout the trial, you can see in these clips, TJ is waving his middle finger to the court. It was as if he had zero regret for the harm that he had caused to society, and all throughout his trial, he just grinned and smiled as if it was no big deal. But what really angered the judge was when he took his dress shirt off. He was wearing a white t-shirt with the words "killer" on it, leaving the victim's parents in the stands just furious. When TJ was given the opportunity to show his sorrow and ask for even the slightest chance of pardon, he just laughed and repeatedly made disrespectful comments. He was punished severely by the judge, as he gave TJ 3 life sentences behind bars and no chance of parole. Fortunately, the judge wanted to make it clear that when you cannot respect the beauty of society and its people, you will be forever punished. And lastly, Nehemiah Grigo. 15-year-old Nehemiah killed both his parents and 3 younger brothers and sisters. He was sentenced by the judge to 120 years in prison. In October of 2015, he suddenly decided to attack them with multiple weapons and end their lives. But no one could understand why he did this, and everyone in his community was astonished, especially since he gave off the impression of being a good kid. In court, he presented his defense as having a long-term hatred for his mother that just caused him to lose control that day. He stated, "I am sorry for taking our parents and our siblings. I wish I could take it back, but reality is that I cannot." Unlike the other victims sentenced to life, he did, however, show regret in his demeanor and in his words. Many people in the jury even stated that he had a very sad tone and repeatedly apologized for ending the lives of all those that were dear to him. Although no one really knows what was the root cause for the creation of the hatred he had towards his mother, and mentally what was going on in his psyche. The judge, however, did feel sympathy for him, as she made it very clear that with good behavior, he would become eligible for parole after 30 years. If you liked this video and want to see more videos just like this, please click on the videos right above the screen, and remember to never be bored, but rather enlightened. Please subscribe.